Welcome to Measuring Making a Difference, which is our second webinar this week for our week of webinars. My name is Jane and I work for SEEE doing our marketing, and a warm welcome to Nicky, who is one of SEEE's directors and going to be our expert speaker today about everything impact measurement. And just a reminder, please keep yourself muted, and we'll have some questions at the end of the discussion. Or if you think of something you want to ask later on, by all means put it in the chat so you don't forget, and we can come back to it later. We are recording these webinars, so if you need to dash off or anything, don't worry, we're going to get it up on the website and we'll email it to you all. And if you aren't already a SEEE member and you're a social enterprise in the East, please do think about joining us, because it's a joint membership with Social Enterprise UK. So it means you get the regional and the national membership. I'm just admitting a couple of people. Hang on a second. They're all coming in now. And I'll hand over now to Nicky, who's going to tell us all about why you should be measuring impact, how to do it, and tell you about our toolbox. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Well, hi everybody, and I apologise in advance if the light changes. We've probably got all the same sort of weather. We're getting. Hi, could you mute yourself, please? We're probably getting the same weather, but at different times. So getting really dark and then really bright sunshine. So I'm facing a window. So if I suddenly sort of do a whiteout thing, that's why. It's because the sun's come out. Hurrah. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is do a little bit of an introduction to social impact measurement, and then I'm going to give you a bit of a quick demo of our online impact measurement toolkit, and talk you through what that does and why. And so we'll sort of share the links with you for everything after the session. So yeah, please, any comments or questions you've got that you think of as we go through, make a note of them in the chat. Right, and I've just remembered I haven't put my phone on silent, so I'm going to do that now. Oh yes, I have. Okay. Right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so welcome to the session. As Jane said, I'm a board member of SEEE, but I've worked in the field of supporting social enterprises for many years, but worked on evaluating projects and designing impact measurement tools for about 12 years now. And so some of this is a summary of or it's kind of taken from some of the experiences that I've had working with social sector organisations on measuring their impact. And we really distilled this information and this knowledge into the impact measurement toolbox. It was something I originally wrote over 10 years ago, but it's now been refreshed and revised and turned into an online tool, which we launched earlier this year. And so we've launched it as a product from SEEE, and it helps with planning and preparation of impact measurement. It's designed probably primarily to be used with small organisations, but it's quite good if you're a large organisation and you're just starting out and you want to look at a particular project as well. It's designed for different members of your team to work in a small group together. So it's not just one person's job, it's a task that's shared out and you bring different perspectives and different roles to the table. And it's designed to be practical and easy to apply in any organisation. There is a hard copy, but we've worked very hard on the online version, so I'm really hoping that that works for people. And we've really tried hard to make it written in clear language so that it's easy to use. And we developed the toolbox initially because we were commissioned to do some research into, and this was another organisation called Guild I was working for at the time. And we were commissioned to find out what tools were out there to measure impact. We actually started off with a conversation at a SEEE board many, many years ago when we said, well, when would you use that? How would you use that? What's the best tool for using that? What is the difference between social audit and social return on investment? And once we discovered that, as a fairly well-informed group, we didn't know, we sort of started a long process which ended up with a commission for some research to find out who's using what and what they're using it for and how they find it. And then from that, we wrote a guide to getting started in impact measurement, not just a research report, but which was written by done by Middlesex University. But we turned the findings into a guide, so a practical tool to help people measure what they were doing. And then following that, we did a lot of training and trained over 300 organisations, and we were commissioned again to do diagnostics, 20 small organisations to find out what their impact measurement needs were. And when we did those diagnostics, we discovered that our initial guide was too much for granted, and we needed to go right back to basics and not make any assumptions, to write something that was absolutely clear about why you needed to be measuring impact. And I've put that quote in here because it's one I use a lot, actually. It's a Mark Twain quote saying, I apologise for such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. I think there's a lot of guides and tools and things about, but I think that often they are quite complicated and can be quite theoretical. And what we wanted to do was really distill what we knew and to try and make that as straightforward and easy to understand as possible without dumbing it down, but making it really, really clear. So when we designed the toolbox, we really, and the training that we were doing, we based it on what we call our 5 foundations of impact measurement. And I'm going to run through these quickly before we come back to the toolbox itself. And the first one is clarity of purpose, and that's knowing what you want to do, which may sound like stating the obvious, but actually you'd be surprised at how many people struggle to articulate this. And when we were doing the training, and I would say, so what's your clarity of purpose? And really, for those of you who are of a theoretical frame of mind, it's about getting a theory of change. So it's, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? What action are you trying to take in order to solve that problem? And what will be the outcome of that? What will have happened as a result of the actions that you've taken? And so I would ask people to say, well, tell me what you do. Tell me what your idea is. What's your purpose? What are you setting out to solve? What are you doing? What would have changed as a result? And so many of them just started telling me what they did. I just said, yes, but why? Why? Why do you do it? So it's surprising how many very well-established organisations couldn't do this. And not now, because I hope you're listening intently, but afterwards, just have a think about how you would place your own organisation, how you would describe your organisation in terms of what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What are we doing to make a difference? And what will be the outcome of it at the end of it? And the outcome should be exactly the reverse of what the problem is. So there's a problem with, it's a road-based thing. So there are a lot of accidents on this junction. That's the problem. So we're going to reduce the speed limit and put in a pedestrian crossing. The result, we want fewer accidents on this junction. It really is absolutely very, very simple. So clarity of purpose, you have to know what that outcome is you're trying to achieve before you start trying to measure whether you've achieved it or not. We always start by saying, what do you already collect? This is a sampling framework for any of you who's into research methods. You need to be thinking about what you already measure, what information do you already collect, and how can you use that? And then, so what's missing to tell you what difference you've made? And quite a lot of people, you know, got loads of information about how many people come and what they did and how many hours it took and did they have a nice time. All of that is, well, most of that is quite useful, but it doesn't explain change. It doesn't say, as a result of coming here, what have you learned? What are you going to take forward? What are you going to do different? Those are the kinds of questions that people need to ask. I'll come on to that in a minute. It's really important to start asking your stakeholders what difference looks like to them, because we can have all the good ideas and we can know the people that we work with and we can understand what issues they're dealing with, but actually we can't always know what changes for them, and sometimes it means we really miss out things that are very important to people. And my colleague and the woman that I originally co-wrote the toolbox with, was doing a project evaluation once, and it was a project for parents working with children with behavioural problems, and she asked all the questions she had in her interview, and then she said at the end, as you do, is there anything else you'd like to tell me? And the woman said, well, the one thing is I'm sleeping much better. And my colleague said, really, that's very interesting, tell me more about it. And she said, yes, because of the techniques I've learned, I feel less stressed, I'm better able to sleep, and as a result I don't feel tired the next day, and I'm better able to deal with my child because I'm not wrung out and exhausted from lack of sleep. And so she thought, my colleague thought, that's very interesting. And she asked the next person she spoke to and said, and how do you sleep? Oh, I sleep so much better now. So there's lots of things you won't know about the work that you're doing unless you actually ask people who've experienced it. And it's not just a kind of box ticking, have you consulted with your users? They can tell us some really valuable stuff here. But you do need to ask the right questions. And I can't tell you how many times I've said to people, and do you ask people what difference it makes, what the project does for them, what difference it makes? So we've got, we collect people's comments and they all go in this book. And they show you the book proudly and it says, oh, I had a lovely time. Oh, the food was fantastic. Oh, everybody's so kind here. And oh, if it wasn't for Jeremy, I don't know what I would have done. He's been my saviour. And I think this is great. This is really lovely. And it's really good for you and your staff to have that kind of feedback, but it doesn't tell me that anything has changed as a result. And that's what I need to know. So the questions you need to ask are often need to be really precise. As a result of coming on this course, have you got a qualification? Have you learned new skills that you're putting into practice? What are you doing differently as a result of the support that you've had? And so those are the things to really focus in on. And then you really need to be able to, what you can and can't tell from the evidence that you've got. It's really easy. I've looked at a lot of reports and seen numbers and I thought, really? Is that true? And then you ask a question and it's sort of, oh, well, 400 people attended our sessions. What, 400 different people? No, quite a lot of them came a lot of times. Okay, well, we need to be saying then that 400 people came, there were 400 sessions were attended, but 25 people attended more than one. And it's great to be able to say, 25 people attended 8 sessions. But you need both of those. You need the overall number of people or of sessions attended or of training sessions delivered. But you do need the specific amount of people who've come to lots and lots of them, because both of those things are important to know. And I often find that people slightly muddy the water between one and the other. But you do need to be able to tell the difference, to tell what happened specifically as a result of what you do and not for other reasons. So is the change directly attributable to what you do? Somebody was, you know, really, really low and they didn't talk to people and they seemed to have the weight of the world on their shoulders, and now they're really chatty and they volunteer and they talk to other people and they seem to have made friends. Well, is that because of what happened in your project, or it could have been something completely different that's happened in their life? You know, they could have had really aggressive neighbours who've moved away, or they could have fallen in love with somebody, or they could have you know, all sorts of life things happen to people that can change their demeanour. You do have to do a bit of digging to find out if it's because of what you did, or is it partly or wholly to do with what you did. You need to think about dead weight. Would these changes have happened anyway? Is it stuff that that was going to have happened? We might have just made it happen a bit quicker, but you know, somebody was going to have got back on their feet after having problems with mental illness. It might have taken them a great deal longer, which is an outcome in itself, but it still would have happened. And I think there's an awful lot of that going on at the moment. I think an awful lot of people are very low and isolated and worried because of COVID and lockdown. I do think, this is a sweeping generalisation, but I do think a lot of us will bounce back. Some people will take longer than others. Some people won't. Some people will need a lot of help, but you just need to be clear whether people are going to have bounced back anyway, with or without your help. Then there's drop-off. Does the change last, or does it kind of gradually fade away over time? That can depend on the kind of work you're doing and the kind of people that you're supporting. I want to pick that up again towards the end, because I've got or later, because I've got a couple of examples of that. And then there's also displacement. So are you solving a problem just for it to pop up somewhere else? The obvious example of that is if you've got a problem with antisocial behaviour or drug dealing going on in a particular place, you put up a CCTV camera, and that place is fine. It doesn't mean that you've solved the problem. It means they've gone somewhere else where there isn't a CCTV camera. So be aware of not just displacing problems, but are you actually resolving them? So some common misunderstandings then. A lot of people want to measure their impact so they can demonstrate that they are saving money for service providers. Actually, service providers, funders from local authorities particularly, and in the health service, want to see that you're saving them money, and they're spending less on a preventative measure that you can provide than they would on an emergency crisis response that they would have to provide. So the net saving is greater, which can be very, very important to do. It's complicated because you have to make sure you're properly reflecting what it costs. But that's not quite the same as the social benefits that we also want to measure. So when we're looking at the social benefits that we create, that's about saying we have an impact on people's quality of life. Their quality of life improves because of the work that we do. That's not about whether it's saving the health service any money. It's great if you are, but it's not the same thing. It's saying of itself, the benefit to that person of feeling less stressed, more in control of their decision making, having a better social network, having somebody they can talk to in a crisis. Those kinds of things are not necessarily about reducing the cost of services. It's about enhancing somebody's quality of life. And when we talk about measuring measuring impact and measuring soft outcomes, what we're doing is placing a value on that improved quality of life. It can be monetized using some methods to say for every £1 that somebody invests, we create £4.60 out of social benefits, but it doesn't have to be. And it is placing the impact on the people that you're trying to support at the centre of the process of measuring impact. Right, this is what I was talking about before in terms of drop-off. You have to approach it differently, I think, when depending on the kind of people you're working with and the kind of solution you're offering. So if you're running training courses and support in writing a CV and getting an interview to help people get a job, at the end of that, you want a certain number of the people that you've worked with to have got a job. And you would measure to say, well, 70% of the people that we've supported have got a job and 65% of them are still in work in a year's time. That would be a really good, successful outcome. It doesn't work for everybody, it never will, and not everybody will stay in that job. It could be all sorts of reasons to do with them or nothing to do with them. It could be just that they happen to end up working for Debenhams. But that has the potential to create permanent change. However, if you're providing support services for people who have a learning disability that they are going to have all their lives, you're probably not going to reduce by very much the amount of support that they will need. So if you're providing day centre activities, a befriending service, that kind of thing, it's not going to, the need for that amongst that group is not going to stop. So you're not going to be able to show that if you invest in this, we save you money later on, because actually a lot of people with more severe needs will need public sector support for the whole of their lives. And whatever you do, it's not going to change that. And both of those things are absolutely fine to be doing. But I think you just need to be aware of which one it is you're presenting. And that might make you think differently about the way that you decide to measure your impact and what you want to show. Another common misunderstanding is that is about measuring social value, because as I've said, this is soft outcomes, it's social stuff, it's quality of life, it's happiness, it's well-being. And that stuff is all very tricky and all very subjective, and and can be easily challenged. So if you think about measuring, you can measure some things with a graph. You can see from the illustration here and show a factual response. That's fine. It's harder when you're talking about how somebody feels and what makes them feel good. But these aren't the only things that we place values on, because if you think about when you buy a house, what you're buying is bricks, mortar, electricity, wiring, plumbing, doors, windows. You're buying the physical elements of the house. What gives a value to that house are all sorts of things completely unconnected with that. It's where it's situated. Are you near a good school? Is there garage parking? Is it a noisy area at night? Has it got a good view that you can see? Is somebody going to build a big development next door? Those are all the things that will make a house price go up and down. And so that value is subjective. It doesn't matter. I haven't got kids. I don't care if I'm near a school or not. It doesn't make any difference to me. It's totally subjective to your own situation. So how we place value on things needs to be done very carefully. And what we do is measure outcomes. So you count how many things you've done. And if somebody says, well, I don't agree with how you've calculated that, they can't argue with how you've counted. You've got evidence of the stuff that you've counted. And then you can say, and this is how we have calculated value. So somebody can say, well, I'm not quite sure about that. Okay, well, we can reduce that, but we've still done 30 of them. The value might have got, you might challenge that it's worth £80 per person, but you can't challenge the number of times we've done it. And if you're working in the field of health, for example, doctors are all scientists. They like graphs, they like randomized control groups, and they're very suspicious about this kind of stuff. So it's really helpful, I've always found, to be completely upfront. It's social research, it's not scientific research. It is about what people have told us and what people think and feel and how we interpret that, which is by and large subjective, but it's just being absolutely clear that that's what you're doing. So those are some of the kind of overriding principles behind the toolbox, and I'm just going to stop sharing this now and quickly whiz you into, hopefully, the online toolbox. Yes, it's here. So I'll just whiz you through one of the sections and show you a couple of the things that it does. So it's got 6 sections. The first is about collecting information, again, starting with what you've got, looking at what you might need to collect and where there are any gaps. The second is about who needs to be involved in the exercise, who from your organisation needs to be involved in the process, and who do you need to be getting feedback from. So that will again depend on the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of people that you're working with. So for example, if you are working with people who have a condition that means they're non-verbal, they've got profound disabilities or something, then you can, with the best will in the world, they are not going to be able to describe how they feel different, but staff who work with them regularly or their family members and carers might be able to describe how that change happened. So those are people that you would need to consult with as part of your measuring impact. The next section is about change. That's that theory of change stuff, and or what is it you're trying to change, and how to ask about it. The kinds of questions you should be asking. Then we've got identifying the outcomes to measure, and again that's linked to the theory of change and going through that process of saying this is what the problem is, this is what we're going to do, this is how we want the situation to be at the end of it. Section E is about processing information, about if we've collected all of this information, whose responsibility is it to do something with it? How are we going to keep it? How are we going to keep updating it over time? And section F is about creating a systematic impact measurement plan. So quite a lot of this is about planning and preparation. And a lot of people have said to us, well, there's loads of tools around to measure impact. Absolutely there are. And it may be that once you've got everything together from this, you would be in a position to go off and use one of those existing tools. So if you want to use one of the really high-end ones, like a social return on investment, if you haven't got all of this stuff in place, there's no way that you will have the information you need to start doing the social return on investment analysis, because it is quite detailed and quite technical. So what I'm going to do is go into I do want to say as well, there's a long section on using the toolbox. So there's quite a lot of guidance about how the toolbox works, what's in it, how to use it, how to use the interactive bit of it, and the fact that it's an online tool. So even if you haven't got experience of using anything online like this, then we direct you and help you to do that all the way through. There's the underlying principles, some of which I've touched on already, what's in it, about 6 sections. So each section has individual reading and thinking, group discussions, group activities, sometimes tasks to go and do, and activity sheets. And there's also some links to other tools and resources as well. So one of the things that I always felt about a lot of the impact measurement tools is that they are designed by by theorists. They're people who are researchers, who are sometimes into academic research, and who want to put a lot of the theory of why you're doing this into the tool. And my experience is also that the people who use these things are not theorists, they're activists. They're people, you are people who want to go out and do something and make a difference and get something done. And you don't want to be bothered reading pages and pages of theory. So we've kept the reading sections really, really short. It's just a few ideas in each section to prompt you to think as an introduction to your discussions. So that's a bit what it looks like. Then there's how to manage the group. We suggest you have a facilitator who is the lead person, and up to 5 people,
Nicky,
including the facilitator. Yeah?
Nicky, sorry, we can't see your screen yet. So I wasn't sure if you were intending to share it now.
Oh, right. Sorry, I was.
So I thought you were doing an intro, then sharing. Apologies, I realised you were actually talking about what you can see.
Sorry, I was trying to do that. Sorry, I need to go. I'd forgotten to. Here we are. Sorry. So whizzing through. So these are the instructions. I was just talking about. This is a list of what's in the toolbox again, and the facilitator is somebody who keeps the group going and arranges meetings, decides who's going to do what job and when you're going to get together again. Just the very practical tasks of keeping you going with this activity. And then what you'll have at the end of it, which is a systematic plan for measuring the impact of your organisation, having involved your users and stakeholders and developed systems for collecting and analysing information. So then we talk about where you start, and you sort of need to review which of these situations reflects your own situation best, and to start there. So you can start anywhere. We do kind of advise that you start at the beginning and work your way through, but if you want to start anywhere else, you can do that. So this is about managing the process, making sure that those 3 to 5 people in your team are kept going, because we know that everybody is very difficult and you've got a lot of pressure on your time. So you do need to make sure that you are finding the time to update the work. So this is the first job. Go to the first section and go to this section and choose where you want to start, and then set an initial meeting to discuss that. And then we suggest a gap of no more than 3 weeks before your first meeting, and then you can go into section A. So, okay. So this is just an example of how the sections are laid out. So it starts off by telling you what's in each section. There will be an activity sheet, and we describe a little bit more because it's section A. And so these are what the sheets look like and what you'll have at the end of it. Then we have one of our reading sessions. What do you count and why? And this is it. So when I said a short section, that is it. It's no longer than that. And that's sort of questions and prompts and ideas that you need to think about before you meet. And then we ask every individual to think about how systematic are you when you come to collecting your information? Which of these scenarios describes your organisation from, oh, it's in there somewhere, but I'd have to think about that one, to, oh, we've got spreadsheets, we've got stats, we've got everything's loaded up, it's all up to date, it's absolutely brilliant. And then it asks you to think about what kind of information you collect, however you do it, and then gives an example of using the activity sheet. And what you do is go in, then meet as a group and work on activity sheet A. So in each section, there is an activity sheet or an activity of some kind, and you click through to it. When we were designing this toolbox as an online version, there were a lot of things that I thought might be quite difficult, but I never thought that just getting from this to an activity sheet would prove to be the most difficult thing. But anyway, it is. So you go into this page here and you can see what you're being asked to do, but you do have to then go to, oh no, you don't, sorry, we did move, sorry, I'd forgotten, we did leave that bit out. So you can then go into this sheet and write bits, and here we are, we're in the edited version. So you can see that you can write into that. The sections do expand, and then there's a page here for each member of the team. So you write your name next to your version. So that might be Jane. And we know this one's Jane. So when we go back to look at it, we can know who's done it and what they've put. And then the facilitator has the function of being able to pull all the information together, either the best ideas or everything, which you can discuss when you go back to meet. And then you save that, obviously. So if we go back to, and I'm going to struggle with this slightly because my Zoom instructions were blocking the tabs at the top there. So you then, once you've done all that work together and completed the activity sheets, you come back together as a group and then decide where you are, and you discuss what everybody's put. And then we suggest you set up a spreadsheet to collect the actual number of people benefiting from the activity. So you've got this kind of information, and then you can decide whether you want to stop and actually do that, or whether you want to go on and work on the next section before you start implementing some of this. So that's what each section broadly looks like. Section E has got more of an interactive game, which involves moving cards around and discussing who does what in the organisation. So that's broadly what it looks like. I'm just going to go back very briefly to the end of the slides, and then we'll stop and do questions. Oh no, I think that's it. Right, so no, I don't think I do need to go there. I've covered the misunderstandings, so I will stop there, and happy to take any questions or comments or anything you want to share about your own experience of measuring impact. Would you like to put your cameras on again?
Yeah, if anyone wants to, they can. Yeah, if anyone wants to share, you know, if they've maybe started measuring impact, or they've got stuck and stopped, or they're just scared about it, all those scenarios, if anyone wants to share those or ask Nicky. Any questions?
We've got quite a few people here from Leading Lives, haven't we? And I know that Leading Lives have done quite a lot on measuring impact. Does somebody want to talk about what you've been doing?
Oh, there's a question in the chat from Gemma at Leading Lives.
Right. What's the one thing we shouldn't include? Oh, I would say, and I've read one of these recently, don't give a long story about, don't give the whole of your backstory about what motivated you to set up, and a history of what happened and when in your organization. That is all valuable information in its place, but I think it can, I've often read reports where it's kind of 2/3 history and 1/3 impact. And at the very minimum, it needs to be the other way around. But I wouldn't include a lot of background. It is that thing about writing a short letter when you haven't had enough time to write a short letter. You need to think it through and sort of refine and distill what it is you want to be saying so that it's clear to other people. And what somebody I know, and I actually sit on a funding assessment panel with her. She works for a big national funding charity, and a few years ago got a bursary to go and do some research in America about how they were evaluating projects over there, and of course their philanthropic sector is very much more progressive than ours, partly because it doesn't have a very strong state sector to fall back on. So the philanthropic movement is very strong and very, very well organised. And she spoke to some of the more innovative practitioners, and somebody said, in a few years' time, we will not be asking the people that we fund how they've spent the money. We will only be asking what the impact of it was. So we won't want to know what you've done with it. We won't need to know what you've spent on. We will only want to know what's happened as a result. And I thought, wow, that's really exciting. So it can be the case that people are very good at doing all that number crunching and will tell you loads and loads of that detail. But actually, a funder like that will only want to know, this is what you were trying to do with our money. Have you done it? What was the impact on the people that you helped? And I think that's really challenging, but it's very exciting. Is anybody there?
I was going to ask a question, actually. I think, what is the most common thing, Nicky, do you think that people get really confused about to do with impact measurement? Do you think they get too hung up on the different types, or?
Well, I think sometimes people want to immediately leap into that monetising. How can we show that for every pound that we invest, we save £450, which I would never believe if I read that in the report. It's so exaggerated. I think the thing people struggle with most is indicators. And if you think about people who are trying to make a difference so if you're trying to work in a community where there's a lot of antisocial behaviour going on, and what you want to have happened at the end is that you have reduced the antisocial behaviour. But unless, frankly, you are the police or you're the local authority, it's going to be really hard to demonstrate that. But what you might be able to show from a smaller project is the indicators that change is happening, and those are the things that I think people really struggle with. But actually make what you're trying to do much more manageable. So an indicator of change is that older people now report feeling more confident in going out. More young people are participating in sport. There are fewer reports of graffiti in the area. More people are attending community meetings. There's smaller, more measurable things that indicate that larger changes are happening. And that, I think, is a really, really, it makes the whole process much easier. The people, I hope nobody's here from an environmental organisation, but the people who really make me tear my hair out is he has a tiny little environmental project that's got a community garden somewhere. And you say, so what difference are you trying to make? And they say, we're trying to reduce global warming. And you think, yes, but it's the change that you can make is so tiny in compared to the problem you're trying to solve. It makes it a bit meaningless. So come up with something that's a bit more meaningful to your local area, and that you can actually tell whether it's happened or not, because people really struggle with that. Another thing, you know, when people are trying to calculate their value, they'll often say, oh, we've 3 people are now paying tax, or we've saved the taxpayer, you know, £90. And you think, really, that doesn't make any difference in the grand scheme of things. So I think those kind of changes, if you can make something that's more meaningful to what you're doing, you can add more to the evidence of it and prove your case much better.
Any other questions, or I suppose, Nick, if you want to explain the cost and the license part, the toolbox of how it works when people sign up. So if we want to talk about, so it's 5 licenses as part of the toolbox, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So what you buy when you buy the toolbox is you buy a license for 5 people to have access to it. And you need to provide us with 5 email addresses from the key people who are going, up to 5, it doesn't have to be 5, the key people in your organisation who will be delivering who will be doing the work, who will be the impact working group. And the, sorry, I'm having a mental block out for this. Jane, do you have the prices to hand? Can you do this bit? Or can we get them on?
So I'll talk. Sorry, I muted myself then as well. Been too stealth with it. So the toolbox is £180, but I think we can probably extend our offer, can't we, for this group like we did before, which means it's a special offer price of £150. And what we'll do is after this, we can email you all a link and a promotional code, so that if you want to purchase a toolbox, you can get that special price. And obviously SEEE is a social enterprise, so the money goes back into us doing more of this type of thing, free events for social enterprises. So it really is a win-win for the sector as well as your business.
Yeah. And that is a one-off price, so it's not something that you have to renew every year. The other thing I didn't say about it is that when you save the workings that you do on the activity sheets, you're effectively saving those into the cloud. So it's on our website, but it's a place that it's a bit like one of those yellow box storage things. We do have access to everybody's yellow boxes, but we don't go there. It's your storage place, so it's your confidential place that you put your information, and you can go back to it and have access to it whenever you need to, and add to it and work and do another exercise the following year if you want.
I know there was one question, I think it was in the registration list. Someone said about, once they've gone through the whole process, what can they sort of get out the other end? What would be the next step to sort of build their report?
Well, you can have you can write a report around the evidence that you've collected when you've been working in the toolbox, or you can use it to go to one of the more detailed process, like a social audit and accounting process, or a social return on investment, and you can use the evidence of that to do that kind of analysis. So you can go on and use another tool as well, but you will have enough from the toolbox just to use to produce a report that I think quite a lot of funders will be satisfied with.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, anyone? No? I think that's everything. Okay, well, we'll send round more information about the toolbox after this, and also a link to the webinar. And if you've got any questions, Nicky's more than happy to answer them separately outside this webinar if you wanted to delve a bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Okay.
Nicky, so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
No problem.